Hi, my name's Kim. I'm an introvert who travels the world whilst being on a tight budget. Depending on the country that you're travelling from and to, you may need a visa for entry. And visas tend to be one of the more important things that you tend to forget when you're travelling. They are so important, but very often overlooked. Today I'm going to be explaining what visas are, where you may need one, and why they're so important. So let's just get into it. What are visas and why are they needed? So a passport and a visa are two completely different documents. Basically, a passport shows where you're from and a visa shows whether you're allowed into a country and for how long you can stay there for. Depending on where you're from, you pretty much always will need a passport to travel from country to country, but you don't always need a visa. It depends on your country of origin, your departure country. It depends on a few different factors. Having a visa for those countries gives you permission to enter, stay and leave that country. You can have a passport without a visa, but you'll not be granted a visa if you don't have a passport. Different countries have different ways to apply for visas. So some countries you need to go to the embassy to apply for it. Some countries you need to have a medical. Some countries you just apply through a website and you get told in 72 hours whether you can go in or not. Sometimes you need to apply for a visa before you leave your country, and sometimes you apply for them when you arrive at a country. There is so many different countries with so many different ways that they do their visas. Making sure that you have the right documentation before you leave to travel is so important. A few things may happen if you end up not having the right visa to get into the country. You may end up arriving at the country but later being deported. You may end up arriving at your arrival airport but being sent straight back home again, or you might not even make it onto the flight. The reason it's so important to make sure that you have these visas in place before you travel is that you can end up spending a load of money on flight tickets and hotels and whatever. You get to the country and you don't even get to go into the country. You get as far as customs and you're on the next flight back home again. Countries that typically need visas. Depending on where you're from and where you're going to will depend on whether you need to get a visa or not. As a UK passport holder myself, there's quite a substantial list of countries that I will need a visa to get into. These include Afghanistan, Australia, Belize, Canada, China, India, Kenya, Maldives, Philippines, Russia, China and the USA. And this list isn't exhaustive. What I'm going to do is put a link down in the description which will tell you all the countries that you will need to have visas for to get into. But be aware, I'm not recommending that you use this website to apply for your visas. There are some websites out there that claim that they're going to apply for visas for certain countries on your behalf. And typically they will, but the thing is they put on admin costs on top. And most countries, it's a reasonably simple process that you can do yourself to apply for a tourist visa. So I'd recommend doing the research and applying for visas yourself. You'll save yourself a lot of money rather than going through a third party. So this website that I've put in the description, it's just for research to see whether you need a visa to get into the country, not to use the website to apply for the visa. You'll typically find links to apply for visas on government websites, and you can also find more information about visas through the FCO website as well. I'll put that link down there too. Different types of visas. So depending on what you want to do when you get to a country will depend on the type of visa that you need to get. The most common visas that we've usually heard of are tourist visas, student visas and working visas. But depending on the country, you may end up having to get a visa for something else. So again, it's worth doing your research before you go to make sure you don't need a visa for what you intend on doing in that country. There are also other types of visas that you may need to apply for. These include exchange visitor visas, business visas, ship crew visas, religious worker visa, domestic employee visa, and journalist and media visa. And depending on the country you're going to depends on how much the visa will cost you. For example, as a UK citizen travelling to Canada, I need to apply for an ETA before I leave, which is an electronic travel authorization. You apply online, it costs you $7 Canadian, and you find out possibly in just a few minutes whether you've been approved or not, or it may take several days. Even though it may only take you a few minutes to find out whether you've been accepted for the visa, they recommend that you apply several weeks ahead of time just in case there are some complications with your application. But if I'm honest, I applied 3 days before I was meant to catch a flight to Canada. Don't do that. Don't be Kim. Don't be like me. Apply for it a decent amount ahead of time just in case. So what happens then is the ETA is electronically linked to your passport, so whenever you travel to Canada, it automatically pops up that you have an ETA, and that ETA will last for 5 years or until your passport expires, whichever one's first. But to get a Russian tourist visa, it's a little bit more complicated. So it can take up to 20 days for your application to be processed, and you need to go to the embassy to do this. As part of the visa application process, you'll be expected to submit biometric data if you're over the age of 12. Everybody who's a foreign national who wants to go into Russia is expected to do this. From what I can gather from researching online, to get a Russian visa, it costs around the £100 mark. You've got to also bear in mind that you need to travel to the embassy to give your data as well. So when you're planning travel to go to Russia, you need to budget this as well. How long is the visa process? Depending on the country you're traveling from and to and the type of visa that you want, it can be almost instantaneous that you find out whether you've been accepted for a visa, if it's an e-form that you're filling out, or if you're looking for certain types of working visas or residence visas, these can take a couple of months, maybe up to a year. So it's really important that you do your research before you book your flight so that you give yourself enough time to apply and for the visa to process if you need to get one. So I hope you found this video really useful. I know that I don't get too specific on what countries you needed and the more processes that you need to go through, but the thing is, every single country is so vastly different in what you need to do. So a lot of it's down to your own research. But it's something that is so important, because if you don't have the right documentation, you either don't get into the country or you could end up accidentally being an illegal immigrant. And a lot of the time, applying for a visa, it's such a simple process that it won't take you up much time in your booking process anyway, and won't actually cost you much additional money. But it's always something to be aware of and to budget for if it is a little bit more expensive. What countries have you been to that you've needed to apply for visas for, and did you find the process easy or hard? Let me know in the comments down below. I release short form travel videos on IGTV every Wednesday, so make sure to go follow me at Awkwardly Kim Travel. I also live stream on this channel every Monday and Friday at 6 PM, and I release a new video every Monday and Friday at 7 PM. So make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so that you are notified every time I go live or every time I release a video. If you want to know what apps I recommend that you download for your next trip, then check this video out here. And if you want to know how to get over jet lag better and what it is and why it happens and why it's so awful, then click that video down here. But I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you again. Enjoy your life. Ta-da!